Hey everyone, this is the Republic Dropship with ATOT Walker, a very unique set that has not been replicated or matched in pretty much any way since the original release of this thing back in 2009. In fact, this is essentially two entire sets that were just sold together, and LEGO has not made minifig compatible versions of either thing since then. The white part up top is the LAAT/C, we're going to call it LAAT-C dropship, and slung below as its cargo is the ATOT, or all-terrain open top transport, which is something that in the movies was only seen in Revenge of the Sith, and it was only seen very, very briefly, but it's been used in some media since then. And together, well, you can use them both. You can also use the LAAT-C with the ATTE from this generation, or the second generation turbo tank, the Juggernaut. You as a human can transport this thing around by lifting a handle up here, and all of it goes together. You see the legs just dangle around, and it's secure enough so you can fly this around and stuff. It's pretty heavy, but not too heavy, especially for its size. A lot of it is hollow, but for the sake of this review, to make things a little bit simpler and so you can get in closer, what I'm going to do is drop off the walker right now and just look at the LAAT-C first. In universe, these things are lengthened, augmented, and mission specialized variations of the LAAT platform that's very popular, and LEGO has tried to be somewhat respectful of the differences by not just basically rebuilding a basic gunship or troop transport with part of it removed. So this is truly a specialized build here. Up front, you have just the single cockpit bubble, so a single person would be able to sit there as a pilot, but they have nothing to do in toy form here. There's no flight yoke, there's no console or anything there. Up front, you have the two rotating cannons that can fire all sorts of different directions. These don't have the best connections to them, honestly. You can see there's actually a hinge behind there. It's easy to break these off accidentally, or accidentally overextend one of these and pop it out of the socket. There are two versions of major stickers that are available to put in that spot for that big panel there. It's a ramp piece. And I got this set used, so it just has that one set of stickers pre-applied. The other set shows some wampas, one on either side, and that actually fits better with the color scheme here, where the red extends into the nose. And in universe, those versions from that squad or company or whatever it was, I guess maybe that wing would also have dark red colored turrets down here. Now this panel is able to open up, so that swings up on the side and gives you access to a small ordnance tray. So let me open the other side as well so I can push it through from the other side. And it just has some spare flick fire missiles for you, so it just gives you some extras. This is not set up well to hold figures. You know, if you wanted to use it as just a little bit of an extra troop transport, aerial troop transport, well, there's a hole under there and you got to do some customization to make them fit. Alongside of the long neck here, you have some tubes and hoses that represent some of the, I believe, power conduits. I think there's a little bit of energy transfer that goes through there, possibly some cooling and hydraulic plumbing goes through those on the real things, and they would actually extend forward and then go down. So these kind of awkwardly end right there. You can actually lift this panel up. It's just for the looks, and it hides away some of the Technic structure inside of there, which is very simple and very skeletal. It's just enough to hold enough of the weight of the cockpit section, but also a lot of the work of creating stability here and strength is just with this long wall of curved and regular bricks on either side. You can also lift this up a bit. You can also remove all of that to get access to more of the Technic stuff, but there's really not much to see. It's honestly not the best construction, and you'll hear me say that a lot. This is very flexible. If you're not careful with it, you can probably start to pull some things apart, break some things apart. This version of ship doesn't have the missile launchers up top, so I don't know what these here represent. I would think they would be forward-facing shield generators in this case, but I just didn't see any official, any official record of what those are supposed to be online. The handle works really well because it fits in and it's not very visible whatsoever, but you pull this up and it will be roughly at the center of gravity of the entire thing with the ATOT underneath there. This is a pretty complex mechanism and build under here, and it's a little bit loose these days. The rubber bands have seen better days, but this does its job. It's got the mag clamps at the end, which do fit onto the walker beneath when you bring it over pretty well. And there's a pretty simple mechanism. I'll have to show you that more closely with the walker in place, but it's just more Technic construction, almost modular. You can fairly easily, without too much disassembly, fairly easily remove all of this, all of the stuff that's used for lifting and connecting. It's surprising how they did that. It's not really integrated in to the structure the way that they do things nowadays, which is very useful if you did want to take this back apart. And there are the launchers for the flick-fire missiles. So you have 4 missiles on either side, and they work together. You just push on the yellow bit at the back. Here's a better angle to see it in action, and all 4 get fired off. There's nothing much else going on with these wings. They're fairly simple in their construction with just stacks of plates, and near the root is another one of those large ramp pieces in white with a very large sticker applied to it. Most of the decorations that you'll see in this entire set are accomplished with stickers and not prints. Around the back, again, there's not all that much to see here, but I do like this view of this core, this center section of it. Not so much all the lifting stuff below. Well, a lot of that just looks kind of messy to me, but this core upper part of the fuselage looks good, and you have another one of these turrets back here as well. Doesn't actually fire, but is posable and all. Real quickly, for eagle-eyed viewers, there is a hatch here that can be opened, but it's not really intended to be a hatch. It's just something to give you an angled panel, so there's no storage space there. And similarly, at the back of the nose compartment, this is clearly something that can be brought down, but it doesn't really do much. You can imagine it to be part of the ingress for the pilot to ultimately climb up, but a figure won't actually fit through there, so again, it's just for your imagination at best. Here's a quick look at the underside if you're curious, including the hole beneath the nose compartment, the very thin Technic beams going through the neck, and the underside of the lifting portion, which again, I will demonstrate more closely with the walker after we look at the walker. Okay, this thing. Have a good look at the front end of it. That's on the left side of your screen there. If it looks kind of wrong to you, kind of messed up, mangled, no worries. You don't need to adjust your device. You don't need to adjust your set. You don't need to adjust your eyes. All of this is supposed to be like this, but it folds back to make the whole thing shorter so that when it fits underneath the dropship, it is a little bit more compact. Also, a little bit of the nose here of the cockpit area provides a little bit of support so it doesn't wiggle around too much. So this is how it is when it's fully deployed. I believe that is a completely non-canonical thing. The real ones in universe would not do that. They just have an AT style of flexible tunnel for the neck inside of there. Not sure if it actually turns from side to side or not in universe, but definitely is not intended to fold all the way back. So 8 legs here. We already saw earlier on that the legs don't have any friction in their joints. So if you just pick this up, they just kind of hang there. But that's not such a bad thing because for the sake of simple and repeatable play, you can just pick this up and then just kind of walk it around the battlefield, and this, look at that. It kind of looks like it's walking. That's actually kind of fun. So I personally don't mind that, even though it would have been nice to have the option of being able to pose it exactly how you want. Ultimately, what you can do here for posing is bring one of the legs up completely straight, and then that has it leaning off to the side. It just changes the relative angles of the legs on one side compared to the other. So it does make it look like it is moving, and that is very stable like that as well. So I think some of that might have been accidental in how it worked out, but it actually does work out very well, I think, for the sake of play. So let me just put that back down. ATOT, again, the OT stands for open top. So in universe, these things don't have a roof over them, which makes them rather odd things, especially how far off the ground they are and all. But Lego has done a good thing here, something that they need to do a lot more of with all sorts of vehicles, walkers, I mean, you name it. Anything that's supposed to carry people, they should have seats for people. And this has seats for 16 people in it, which is just great and far too uncommon. You know, it's essentially a big walking bus, and you can put tons and tons of your collected troopers in there. They also include a fair number of them with the set. We'll take a look at the figures later on. They can do a little bit of point defense over the edge of the railing with their weapons. These are their own weapons, basically to match all of the figures that are included with the set, all the regular troopers. So you can take those off, or you can just leave them in place, spin them around like that. And to get your troopers in here, in universe, somewhat realistically, there's this ramp at the back. That's nice. It comes down, and it comes all the way down to the ground, but it's almost vertical. So it's like a rock climb. They could have had just one more length, I think, of fold to this, or just, you know, an additional flap that comes up from underneath. It would have gone a long way. This has the rotating. These are supposed to be anti-personnel cannons at the back as well. So those are on turrets. I'm not sure exactly who would be responsible for operating those. Probably troopers sitting towards the rear. And these are supposed to be armor plates along the side and all. Things get a little bit thicker up towards the front. And lastly, just a closer look at how that whole cockpit works. So this is the first part that flips back, that just folds down. There's actually enough room for your figures to continue to sit there, so you don't need to remove anybody when you do this transformation. All of this, again, is able to just rotate back like that. Or if you simply want to get access to the pilot's position, the driver's position, the front of this is able to hinge forward. So that's a good start. And then the sides hinge out. Excellent. So you get all sorts of access to a single seat there. Again, no console, no steering wheel or anything, but at least you can put a person there, and there's no problem fitting them. A couple of extra small details I want to point out that I don't like. If you try to bring this back too quickly or open it too quickly, it all just breaks off, because ultimately they're just two anti-studs that are built into the base of that windscreen piece, and they attach onto hinges, which themselves sometimes have more friction than the clutch power of those two anti-studs there. So you kind of have to be careful with that, and it will kind of disassemble itself a bit. I don't like the fact that the cannons up front are only able to go up and down. You're not able to turn them side to side. And also these little bits here fall off very easily if you grab the legs, especially the ones on the undersides. Little details that look good, but they're not at all durable, and they needed more connections, just something going across the top, or maybe more thickness or something. I do appreciate the fact that these decorations for these ankle joints are all prints, so there are 8 of that piece. The process of picking this up with the dropship is, well, a process. First you fold this down, fold this back, then come in here. This little lift beam has to be raised, and there's a catch that will keep it in place. And do beware, this catch will want to leave, and this whole thing will want to fall, and that'll mess up all sorts of things for carrying around and also setting it back down. Next on the dropship, and this is going to be a little bit awkward if you're trying to hold it from the handle, but you want to push this yellow bar in, and you'll notice right down inside of there's a small yellow bushing that's on an axle. That's going to fall down, and what it's going to do is fall down into a space that prevents another axle from returning. So now this yellow bar doesn't come back out when I release. Here's how the same thing looks from the back. So you can see I'm pushing against the force of the blue rubber band, and then the center axle will drop and lock the whole thing. Now for the most elegant and effortless part of the process, followed immediately by the most tricky and risky part. So as long as you have the mag clamps roughly aligned with this little plate on either side of the walker, as you lower the dropship, it'll just naturally just kind of hug the whole thing. Everything just moves into place pretty perfectly, almost like magic. It looks good and it feels good. But then right at the end, you need to be sure to perfectly align that little yellow bushing that you can just barely see, the one that we saw earlier that's contributing to locking the mechanism open. That needs to be aligned just with the top of this beam here. So those have to come together And you don't want to move side to side, otherwise you'll spring the trap prematurely. I almost got it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. If you don't do it perfectly, you essentially set off 2 mouse traps. One is on the drop ship, so the part that you had to lock into place, that springs forward, and then this beam on the walker will loosen up. The little trap down here, that just loosens up on its own. So you have to reset that, and you have to reset the mechanism on the drop ship. If you get it just right though, there you go. You can just lift it up and fly away immediately. The final complications come if you want to put this down with the drop ship still holding on to the walker. If you just want to drop the walker, just push the yellow thing. I showed you that earlier. It just drops it. No problem. But if you want to keep these together on display or whatnot, then you want to absolutely make sure that the legs of the walker go back, forward, so it's not sitting in a awkward or at an awkward angle, ready to suddenly just drop and then cause parts to break from all the force that suddenly goes through the entire frame. Next, you actually want to line up the nose of the walker here to go between the brick plates, the outer brick plates of the drop ship. So the nose will actually nestle up underneath there, in between there, with the Technic beams that go through the neck. There's just enough space for it to fit in there. And finally, you want to reset this mousetrap that's on the walker itself, the little one that has the little toggle that you turn up to make sure that the lifting beam doesn't drop down. That's what you want. You want it to be completely stationary like that. Then you can let go safely, and you don't have to worry about anything, because now all of the weight is being held by Technic structures throughout all of this. If you skip any one of those steps accidentally or just from not caring about it, you can still set this down, but there's a strong chance that at some point it'll just suddenly go ka-clunk, which will put all sorts of stresses through everything. You'll also be straining pieces, risking bending parts long term. Just a lot of things can go bad. So take extra care if you do get one of these and you want to pose it like this. Definitely look at what you're doing. Make sure everything is relaxed as much as possible, and it's Technic on Technic. The minifig selection for this set was great. Plain, no nonsense, just a bunch of troopers. 2 pilots, one of them could be used as a driver for the walker, and the rest are just plain Jane Phase 1ers. Here's a closer look at a representative of each. They had different torso prints, which is nice, but the helmet molds, strictly speaking, should have been different. The clone pilot should have not had the full pronounced ventral fin, and the shaping of the face portion would have been a little bit different as well. But given this era, this year of Lego, I find that to be forgivable. You know, they looked close enough in universe, and these are highly massable units, so I don't think it was that bad of a deal back then. And nowadays they would probably do something different, but for 2009, I think that these were good, and most importantly, we got plenty of them in the set. The only problem was, not again. No. Does that? No. Please make it stop. This set cost $250 US in 2009. Well, let's not look at things through rose-colored glasses here. That was a lot of money in 2009 for 1,758 pieces. Adjusted for inflation, we're talking about $300 US for 1,758 pieces. A very poor price-to-part ratio, though there are a fair number of fairly large pieces here, so I definitely would not have expected this to come to the magical 10 cents that we like to look for. That's becoming more and more unreasonable, even at that. But let me share with you my personal thoughts now about this. We've looked at the features, seen how it all works. You see what the size is. I mean, this isn't that much closer to the camera than I am. So you're seeing kind of, relatively, you get a general idea of it relative to an adult, and you see the minifigures there as well. This is huge. This is absolutely massive. It is visible from not just across a room, but from down a street. I mean, this is big in every possible way, but it's not a great build. Just being honest here. The walker, I think, is fine for what it is, and especially for its day. it accomplishes its goals. It has the beefy legs, though it has the little parts that fall off. That's not that big of a deal. It has tons of seats. It is a troop transport that can actually transport troops. And I just see right now that that little mousetrap there is wanting to get loose just from when I picked this up to bring it to the table. There we go. Whoo, whoo, whoo. Gotta get it right. Don't want things falling apart just looking at them. I'll get back to that point in a moment. But yeah, the walker works, you know, and having that little lift beam in the center that you can pick up and use not just with this, not just with the LAAT, with the dropship, but with your fingers to make it look like it's walking. That's super cool. That's all I could possibly ask for from a walker that is a troop transport. The ability to make it walk and to transport troops. And hey, it even comes with troops. Fantastic. And weapons for them at that, not stud shooters. But the LAAT, the dropship itself, with its flimsy, didn't even mean to do that, flimsy construction, this also pops off easily. This stuff around the side that you really don't want to grab, look at that, what's going on right there? The very difficult mechanism that's very finicky, just needs to be dealt with just right. Did not mean to do that, I swear. Flick-fire missile tip. But seriously, so many things here. These actually can fall off easily as well. These don't stay on particularly well. You can easily do that. Okay. These aren't even connected that well over time. You probably saw more than I pointed out or would have noticed myself while filming this. You probably saw more gaps and things that weren't pushed together all the way. Part of that is from these being old pieces, and the thing was probably on display just naturally with a lot of stress in it regardless, but a lot of these pieces are not locked together. The construction techniques don't hold up to today's standards. That's probably an illegal technique right there as I look at it, as this hinge is probably trying to push farther than the whole thing wants to go. That's probably what's prying all of this apart. Ultimately, even if this was constructed really, really well, it has one job, and it doesn't do a great job of it because of how finicky the mechanism is. But take away the walker, and you're left with what? You're left with a single seat plane that's really big and has all these mechanisms that float around down here. And okay, you can fire off the flick-fire missiles with it, but it's big, it's unwieldy, and ultimately you only want to use it to transport the walker. And for $300 US for 1,758 pieces, I feel like this was a one and done sort of thing. It totally makes sense to me now that I actually have it here in front of me, and I've had some time to mess around with it, to play with it, and not to mention the fact that I actually built it, so I know how all of it went together. I'm not surprised at all that they haven't made another one of these, because if they made another one by today's standards, it would have to have probably at least 50% more pieces, if not 100% more pieces. And it would be so much better, it would work better, it would have more detail, and most importantly, it would be stronger. It wouldn't have so much stuff that falls apart or is so finicky. And it would cost probably $500 to $600. So for collectors, for folks nostalgic towards these times, who either had this or didn't have it back then and always wanted it, it will always be a chase item. It will always be an object of desire, I think, and understandably so. But nostalgia definitely puts rose-tinted glasses on all of us. And this isn't that great of a set, to be perfectly honest. Not in general, and not for the price. But it sure is cool, and I sure am glad to have had it. Now I'm looking forward to not having it anymore. But at least for now, I have been able to share it with you, and I hope that you enjoyed that, whether you agree with my opinions or not. I hope that I showed you everything that you wanted to see about this if you weren't familiar with it before. I do not have a build video for these two things because I did them just offline on my own time, spent quite some time doing it because it just came in a huge pile of parts. Some of them were partly put together. Some of them were partly put together wrong when I received them, and some parts had to be substituted and all. So just took too much time and was too much of a hassle to try to turn that into a proper build video. But this is the complete thing. Thank you very much for watching, and I've got a lot more work to do, more reviews to bring you. So I'll talk to you again soon.